Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome. Just checking we're live, and we are. Cool. All right. Well, Cynthia on demand. Good morning from sunny downtown Hawaii. And letting everybody know that we're here. What are we going to speak about today? Radiant Wear Vintage. How are you? You're the only one on right now that I can see. And my phone's battery's nearly out. So I was thinking about what to speak about today. Let me just record this for our members as well. And then we'll get started. We're here for a short time, not a long time. But record to cloud. All right, so I wanted to come on today for this first part, which is the on demand, before we go into our inner circle, to, I guess, touch in on, and I guess it depends who turns up and whether we have a conversation or not. If it's me talking to me about me, then I may jump off. All right, so here we go. People are starting to come on now. Oops. Pinning me. All right. So what's been on my mind? Not a lot, actually. How are my three minds dancing? Let me ask you this. So I'm looking off into the clouds, and I do want to touch on the Cloud Odyssey program that starts in November 8th. It starts, it's a 6-month journey. So I'm looking at the clouds, and they're actually quite interesting, quite wispy and high. Wispy and high, which is relevant to what I wanted to touch on today to some degree. How are you in relationship? Whether you have a partner or not, our relationships and how they mirror to us what is unconscious, what we, I won't say need, but what we need, what we need to look at. And I'm going to give you some examples, or not so much examples, but I'm going to give you a bit of a chat. Like, okay, I'm talking to you about a program. You may not be interested in the program. I don't know why you wouldn't be interested in the program, but you may not be for whatever reason. There are many ways to work with me. But primarily it's about our relationship to self, relationship to how we fear, our fearing, right? Our fearing when something's happening in our field, in our energy field, in our visual field, in our world, in our environment. How are you? And I'm telling you, I have observed the human as a species formally for 30 years. But from about age 8, which I can see your figure 8, it's an 8 now, not an infinity on your wall. I'm just looking at someone's background on the Zoom. you know, since I was about 8. And, going into those ages and stages of development where you're starting to look around you and going, what, what, huh? I, I don't know where you grew up, how you grew up, how you were encoded, what's laid down in your layers, with multiple layers. Think of any geologist. You know any geologist? Are you a geologist? Are you interested in stone? My best friend all through uni was a geologist and still technically is. She was the first female geologist in Australia, and she came from the UK. And we were both professionals going into studying and doing art formally as a profession. And we were bringing in our professional world. So mine being the human experience. So I did a lot of installation, a lot of work around helping people see themselves, see the world, right? And the impact. And it's not just like watching the news or whatever. It's like I spoke to people, and I still do. I speak to people about their terror. The conversations I have pretty much every day are around what's not feeling great. Can you imagine a life where most of what you hear is people's trauma, right? And I love it. I'm good at it. I am built to sit in the fire with you, right? There was a time when it was too much for me, and I left that work. I literally ran away to Africa. I ran to Africa, and what did I do? I did my master's in contemporary and visual art. But what was that art about? I started to research and look at the land, the peoples, right? The different cultures. You've got where I was in Francistown, which is Botswana, you have the Afrikaans, but then you have the English and there's different Africans, right? So anyway, I could go on and on, but then you've got the Portuguese, and then you've got the Tetswanans, who are the local Botswanans, and that were there, and their history, and finding out more about their history and how apartheid back in the day impacted them differently to other parts of Africa, and how the people were. Why is this interesting or important to you? Why is how people over the other side of the world important to you? Right? Because how we are in the world impacts you, even if it is the other side of the world, right? So let's bring it closer to home, because I did eventually come back home, because I ended up just doing, sitting down with the same, a human is a human is a human is a human. It's like a vehicle is a vehicle. It might be a different color, a different shape, and maybe runs better on slightly different fuel than others, right? Some of you might be vegetarians, some of you might be, what's the meat one? Carnivores, carnies, I call you. I was in Africa. It's like meat-based diet over there, and we called it carni. No carni, no carni. In Italy as well, no carni. Anyway, so what fuel makes you sing, right? But ultimately, so in the army, I learned how to, still got all my licenses, truck driver, truck and bus and all the different vehicles, different amounts of axles and bush phase and all the rest. So we needed to know how to fault find, because when we were at war or out in the bush or doing training, there wasn't a petrol station, right? There wasn't somewhere or someone else to come and change your tires that were nearly as tall as you on a truck. So I had to know how to do that for every vehicle, not just say, oh, I'm a girl, or I'm young, or I don't, my muscles aren't so, right? I had to learn how to do it by myself in the case that other people's lives depended on me getting supplies to them, right? Again, how does this relate to you? Do you see what I mean? My stories are, I don't just tell you an odd story, right? It's like you can prepare and plan. We used to say the 7 Ps, but I actually heard Snoop saying it, but he left out the swear word bit. But prior preparation, planning prevents poor performance. There's a P left out, right? It's not working in your fear. It's understanding, right, how you are, what the potential of that situation is, and having a plan and practicing it, right? So in peacetime, we practiced. Okay. So when it hit the fan, and, you know, most of my work was in defense, right? So protecting, I can't go into it, but, you know, not attack, defense of the country. So practicing in the peacetime, practicing when the nervous system was able to retain some of it, and then we would amp up the stress. So we'd go outfield on rations and with minimum sleep in the cold and the rain, sleeping under a hoochie, which is just a piece of material slung off a tree, right? And they'd get us up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, frighten us with loud noises and stuff, to see whether we could do what we needed to do in the times of stress. So if we practice enough, it's like driving a car. I drive a manual car, although we've got an automatic here, but I love manuals, because driving trucks, when you're double clutching back in the day, so if you know, you know, if you don't know, you don't know, that's cool, right? It took practice, right? When you've got 8 or more gears, forwards and backwards, how to smoothly drive that. So in my civilian life, I had a manual, so I could keep those patterns of behavior. Do you see what I'm saying? Practice, setting my life up to be a little easier, so that I could jump into any vehicle and not have to go, oh, what was that? How do I do that, right? Anyway, so that's just how I work. Because I was a bit of a, you know, I had to get it right because I was young and I was a female in infantry, right? So how's it, again, can you see where I'm going? Can any of you see where I'm going? I'm going to spell it out for you in a minute. I'll tell you one more story to see if you can match them together. And you don't have to, but it's just fun for me. I'm entertaining myself. So when I worked with children as a therapeutic specialist. So I'd go to their homes or I'd go to their schools, and I would teach them. Often it was play or some sort of game. Sometimes it was sport. With some of the boys, I would kick the footy around and things like that. But everything we did, or we did and do, was training, right? While they're happy, while they're joyful, while they're relaxed, while they're able to hear and respond. Okay, practice. And then, how many of you have heard about I've talked about the window of tolerance. So those of you on the workshop on the weekend, I was talking about the window of tolerance. A lot of these children, a lot of these humans that I work with have a very almost non-existent window of tolerance, meaning put a little bit of stress and they've lost the plot, right? So for a child that has a very small window of tolerance or very disorganized attachment, very much from 1 to 100, when a little bit of stress comes in or they get overwhelmed and they go boom, right? You probably know people like that, and you might be like that, pardon me, yourself, or you might be like that in certain situations. So they need help to practice even seeing what the fear is, seeing what the trigger might be, seeing what they might need to prepare for. Right? So we've got the practicing. We practice in peacetime. So then when there's the war, which might be your friend, your mother, your father, your uncle, your dog, your cat, you know, vomiting on your keyboard. Who did that happen to? So it happened to someone recently. I don't think it was any of you. Anyway, it happened. And not to me, but, and, you know, whatever it is. Like this morning, I really didn't want to sit inside. My body couldn't, well, it could, but it didn't want to sit inside. And I came out, and the neighbors were doing their blowing the, you know, doing the gardening and stuff with the weed blower or whippersnipper and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, okay, so I started to wheel my little, I got my little table here, but I've got all these bits that I sort of bring with me, you know, my drink and my little first aid kit if I decide to teach you that, my sunglasses and all that. Not that I very well, my, you know, my phones, this one to see the chat, and this one's on Insta, right? So there's a lot of bits. Oh, just noticed there you go. My computer just said it was had no battery, but it's plugged in, so it's good now. So I could have freaked out about that. Some of you may. You know, when you set up, you spend all this time setting up, and it's like, yeah, this is nice. I need outside today. Yet this is where I said I would be, and this is what my body needs, right? So, you know, if stuff was going on out here really badly, I would have sat inside, right? No biggie. But my body needed to be out here today. Right? So if I can do that, I'll do that. So anyway, I come back out and I'm like, yep, and I've got a few minutes, like I was, you know, trying to do the let you all know I was here and whatnot. And it stopped. But just as I was going on, it started again. It's like, okay, I'm going to just choose to sit outside, and whatever happens, happens. And so that's what I did. And minutes, like maybe 2 minutes later, he got in the car and left. It doesn't mean to say there won't be other things. It could be the wind might pick up and, like, I'll be crazy hair, like I sort of am anyway. But so getting back to this story of like practice and preparing and not being triggered by life, because most of you, all of us actually, are triggered by life. You can't tell me you're not triggered by life. And if you do, you're full of what hits the fan. You just are. I know the human system enough that if you think you don't stress or you're not stressed, you're unconscious. What types of stress, like what level of stress, how close you are to your window of tolerance, which is going into trauma, right? You're really agitated and whatnot. So what I wanted to touch in on today, because I don't want to spend a lot of time here, is basically saying, think about yourself in relationship. Think about the other person in relationship. So just choose somebody. I don't care who it is. It could be your partner. If you've got a partner, it's probably your partner, right? But because when we are not coping well or we're challenged, the behaviors that I'm talking about are what I want you to look at, not judge, look at. You with me? And that relates, oh my goodness, let me just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 birds on one little twig. I wish I could show, I wonder if I could show it Insta. See if I can show Insta. Oh, I made them fly away. Sorry. Like all these little finches, 12 of them. All right. So I scared them with the phone. It's all right. You got your person. When there's a disagreement, so it would depend, right? Sometimes it will be you that's triggered, and sometimes it'll be them. And when they're triggered, you may not be until you are. Meaning, you could wake up and it's all sunny skies, and they wake up in thunderstorm, or whatever narrative that is for you. And you're like, good. See, I generally wake up, because the interesting thing for me is the more tired I am, the more energy I have. And that's how I know now as an adult, right? That if I'm really like pinging off the walls and like really, I probably need to see if I can, I won't say sleep, but relax, meditate, do some breath or something. Right? So I don't have that, like, I'm tired. I have this. I have, what do you want to do? And I'll be like so tired, but my body just, it goes in the opposite. So when you know how you are, then you can plan and prepare for things. You can tell people around you how you are. And this is what I taught the children. This is what I taught their parents or their foster parents or their teachers. Because until they were able to understand how they are, whatever age, but I'm talking specifically for children, where they can get some emotional literacy. So knowing, oh, okay, I feel this. Oh, so if someone says, oh, My mum's awesome because she raised three of us that are pretty much energetic, like little firecrackers. And she was very good at helping us understand what was going on in our body. She'll say, "Are you tired? Do you need a drink of water? Do you need to go to the toilet?" Even as an adult, she's never stopped, right? If you think about that, and she'll say a few other things, but if you think about that, when you have an infant, so this is a little bit of parenting. uh, when you have an infant, their noises are their language. Their behavior is their language. They don't have our words yet. They have sounds, but those sounds are words. Right? So part of my job many years ago was we had in Australia, we have these infants, or they're like sleep. You go there when your child's having a lot of difficulty eating and sleeping, but they're infants, right? They can't speak or barely. And the mother, and usually the mother and the child, will sleep there, and they're monitored, the whole time. So what their sleep pattern is, whether they get up, how they get up, what are the noises they make. So a lot of my clients, they would go through these, because the thing is that if there's no attachment, keyword, if the attachment is, well, there's particular types of attachment, right? So I'm not going to go into that today, but how we bond to other people, how we bond to our parents and primary caregivers, determines how we're encoded and our behaviors later in life, right? So this is why I've gone all the way out here and I'm coming all the way back into how a child sleeps, or how we understand and relate to them, how we understand the behavior. The bonding is the attunement. So those of you in your spiritual development, you're attuning to invisible information, right? It's an attunement, but attunement is a big part of the bonding with a child. And you might be the child, or had been the child, right? So if there's disruption in that attunement and in that bonding, which if a child's going in and out of hospital or out of, we call it out of home care, so foster care, and, maybe even going to these respite centers and things like that, because their behaviors may be difficult for a mother who has challenges, right? Whatever those challenges might be. And no judgment, just how it is. So then how do you help those children to be able to bond and attune later in life, right? So this is why they would call me in, because they would go to these sleep centers and whatnot, and then they'd come out after, I don't know, however many days of monitoring, but they were still having all their problems. So I was always the safety net of the safety net. So they'd go to all these different programs and whatnot, and then they'd come to me and I'd say, well, just come to me first. Like, hello. And you don't need to go through all of those processes months and months and months, because a lot of these people, if they can't get that sorted, they may lose the children, right? It's not up to me. But if over time there's stress building and the behaviors that come up from your unconscious, the things you've been pushing around and whatnot, eventually they'll come up. Pressure, 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 pop. Yeah, oh my goodness, how did I ever get here? I used to say it's like boiling a frog. Oh, it's horrible, but right? Put the frog in cold water in a pot on a stove, and it's cool. It'll stay there. It'll stay there the whole way because it's gradual rising of temperature. You don't even know till it's too late. But no, I'm going all over the place. You following me? Am I making sense? To some degree. All right. So what I'm saying, what the point of this live is really looking at where you are challenged or where you know you are challenged, because often where we're really challenged, we can't see it. It's unconscious. And your partner or someone else might be telling you. So listen to other people. You're not taking it all as gospel, because they might say that, you're a horrible person, and you're like, well, I'm not. But what they might mean is there's a blind spot. There might be something that you're missing. And they may blow it up in their stress. Do you see what I mean? Or not? I was going to bring in some particular examples, but well, like I will. So behaviors. So on some of the adaptive strategies, it might be that there's an anxious attachment or an avoidant attachment, right? And so if you've got those two attachments together, one's trying to come to and is more of a reactor, right? Wants to respond, and the other one's trying to get away. Might go quiet, silent, doesn't want to speak, doesn't want to have the communication, right? And that triggers the other person, and the other person's trying to fix it. Do you see what I mean? I think I'll start bringing in some actual examples, not today, but to help you see that when I'm talking about the theory, it's not just words. It's literally how we are as humans. And when we can start to see it, you might see it in the other because you have a problem with the other. You have a challenge with the other. But I won't say the only reason, but there's a big chance that the reason why you have a challenge is because of how you are set up. Right? So we say opposites attract, like the magnet, the poles, the polarity. So there'll be times when you're drawn together. So for instance, if there were two people like me that came together, I don't know how that would happen. Usually you're not attracted to how, you, right? It's interesting with twins. I was mentioning this to someone the other day. Like twins, this is generalization, but twins can be, especially mirror image or identical, can be very, very close, or they can be completely distant. They don't want anything to do with each other. They try to be so different from each other, right? There's a lot of twins in my family, right? And could you imagine, like, if you were looking at yourself? I got used to looking at myself because I'm sitting here on social media all the time. That's what I'm saying. Put your cameras on, like, talk to me and all the rest of it, because I'm looking at you, right? I can look at me there, but I'm looking at you up there. I had to get used to looking at myself or seeing myself and hearing myself if I'm having to edit classes and whatnot, or series. Oh my goodness, half the time I don't edit them anymore because I'm hearing my voice. constantly. And I'm like, oh. Now I just got used to it. It's like whatever it is. So it's actually good to do that. You know what I mean? Because you have to accept how you are. Or you can avoid hearing your voice or recording your voice, or, um, you know, avoiding mirrors or photos and all of that the rest of your life, right? Which is what some people do in other ways. So what was I saying? So we have these behaviors. So we're pulling together, and the partner may be, when they get any sort of discomfort, any sort of overwhelm, any sort of stress, may get quiet, may stop communicating, or maybe they never really communicated much anyway, and you were okay with that. But when there's more stress, it gets even more isolating, right? And there'll be behaviors to try and help them stay safe in their minds. Do you know anyone like that? You might even have those. And so you can go up and down, right? There are times when I want to be by myself. There are times when I don't talk. I love not talking. You know, when I'm not working, I'm not talking. Right? I don't talk on the phone. It's like when I was a social worker, and my job was doing supervision and seeing clients and going to, government, presenting things and all the rest of it. I was talking all day, every day. When I got home, I didn't want to talk. So I didn't want to call my family or talk to, because I'd been talking all day. But you can't just cut, well, you can, but if you want those relationships, you find ways to tend to the relationships, right? The reason that I may not want to talk when I got home was because of my stress level. And so rather than being like that, especially when I came back from running away to Africa, right, I went back into those jobs, right, had more responsibility, became the senior in that field. And so everyone was coming to, do you see? So when I got home, my P's, prior preparation and planning, prevents pollution in the population, right? Explosions of paraphernalia into the field. I let my family know that when I got home from that particular work, that I would come in, I would put my stuff down, I'd say hello, but that I needed that half hour, and I would decompress. I would do what my nervous system needed to do to integrate, to accept, to acknowledge, to do all that. It took usually about 15 minutes. I would just go and do a little meditation. It was a particular type of meditation, and I was good. Come out, and I was like, me again. I was back, right? Ready to be filled back up, because our system, there's a lot of you, there's a little lizard just jumped out. There's a lot of us, and we can look at that energetically, where, sometimes you might even be sitting here listening to me if I, some classes go on, and you just are full. You cannot take in another piece of data, another piece of anything. You've just done, right? So I had to learn, it's not about stopping and running away. Well, I didn't really run away. we went to live in Africa, right? So that's what we did. But it's a good story. I mean, it was working towards getting out of that particular work, which if I didn't make that plan, I'd probably still be there, which would be fine, but it's not what I was here to do. It wasn't only that. There's more. So have you identified something? Have you written it down? Is it someone or is it you? Or is it both? So when you are, the last time that you had, may not have been an argument because you may be somebody who walks away. And again, we're not saying that's a negative, right? Necessarily, that could be preventing something exploding. But if every time there's, one of you wants to talk about or discuss or review your relationship or bring up something that may be difficult to talk about, the other one shuts down and walks away or changes the subject, or do you see? That's a strategy. And it's unconscious most of the time. And even if you brought it up to the person, they may fight with you about it. So you can look at this from your own point of view or from their point of view. But where you do it in one area, you'll do it in a lot of areas. Do you find it difficult to approach, to have a conversation about something that really needs to be discussed? Or when the other person comes to you to speak about maybe a shift or a change or acknowledging something in the relationship, maybe you get angry. The shift in the body, in the sensation. Because we all have them. It's just a matter of whether they're conscious or unconscious. And if they're conscious, then they don't need to behave out like these children. Right? So I taught the children how to identify how they felt, what they felt, so that then they could place a name to it. So for instance, I know I'm jumping around, but there's lots of different people watching it. So, we can be more specific in groups, right? But if the teacher, because I worked with teachers as well, right? Usually the schools that the children that I worked with went to, I would work with the teachers and the principal. And the teachers would be telling me all the issues that they're having with the child and the disruption and da-da-da-da-da. Often the child would trigger the teacher. And so then the teacher would be triggered for the rest of the classroom. So there's this whole big scenario, but there's all sorts of tools and relating that you can do in a classroom setting or in a home setting. In the classroom, they had many different things. There's probably newer ways now, but being able to identify, to tell the teacher something, the child needs to know how they feel, like what's happening, what their first somatic information is, right? So if you say, well, here's a card system, so the child can put up a red card or yellow card or whatever when they need some regulation or co-regulation or proximity, which means the teacher might move closer to the child. Just that proximity sometimes can calm people, depending on what's going on. But if they don't know what's going on, how can they use the card system? And I came across this all the time. They would have all these wonderful systems, but the child can't use it. You may not be able to use, you hear all this self-help stuff and you can't use it. Why? Because of that first piece. So by the time you're reaching for a card, or you're reaching to talk to your partner, or you're someone in a relationship with, or even a child, the behaviors have gone on so much, you're so aroused that you're touching on that outside windows of tolerance. So you're either going to, drop in and collapse, or go and explode. Either way, you're not in relationship anymore. So we're talking about understanding the language prior to that external behavior, which is where you meet the world. And if I had my whiteboard, maybe I could, if I had my thing, I could just write on the window, couldn't I? But you've got that inner circle where you're calm. That's your true identity, your Satnam, or your mindful awareness. And the second circle is all the attachment issues, all the conditioning, trauma, where your needs and wants weren't met, how you encoded that, your conditioning. And then on the outer circle is where that meets the world. Your behavior meets the world. So how you are meets the other person. And if we're not able to recognize those unconscious behaviors and navigate those, right? Preparing in some instances of how, if you want a relationship at a 10, right? Or some of you might even want it at a 5 for now, right? And it could be with a parent, with a child, with a sibling, with whoever, your employer, your employees. Then understanding your trigger, because it's cyclical, and as it keeps going around in cycle, it builds. So you become this pattern of that behavior. And so the adaptive strategy, which might be to go quiet or move away, or even go into the other room, or close the door, or not call, or whatever it is, to not address, to withdraw. So that might be the hypo aroused, like a freeze or a distance. Does not make it better. Because there'll be time for you to breathe, maybe regulate, which is great. If you need that, do that. Learn how to regulate, right? Practice when you're calm. So when the wave or the thunderstorm comes or starts to build, you can hear the thunder, so you know it's coming. You can do your resourcing. So when the thunderstorm hits, which might be your mother telling you something about yourself, I don't know, or your father or your brother or your, whoever, or your boss saying, something about your work, whatever it is. Okay. Or that the neighbors are making a lot of noise and I can't get away from it. So now the other neighbor, I don't know if you can hear it, is doing their gardening, but it's so far off in the distance, right? So how do you navigate your stress? It will impact every relationship. And so yeah, what we're doing in cloud is that. So I think I'll leave it at that. So what are you getting from this? Who's still here? Let me see. So if you pull all the pieces together, of my roundabout ways of sharing, prior preparation and planning prevents piss poor performance, basically. Right? So we could do that on for anything. Tracking, planning, what you monitor grows, what you track succeeds. So you could choose just to monitor yourself today to see where there's where the wind blows within that window of tolerance, like where you start feeling something stronger in your body. You don't even have to do anything about it. Just start monitoring it. Okay. When I come to that crossroads, I feel something. It might be in your gut or in your chest or in your arms or in your head, or your teeth clench, or your eyes squint, or whatever. There was one little boy I worked with, and after, hanging out with him for quite a while, and it ended up being over years, and I would see him, it was intensive support. So sometimes I'd be taking him to school, sometimes I'd be at school with him, sometimes I'd be having dinner with them. Like, I was intense support. I was part of the family almost, and I knew all his little quirks of his nervous system. And so being able to teach him about that. So he had a little, where his eye would droop. His eye would droop when his nervous system. So sometimes muscles will droop. Like, you can tell how you are by looking at your face. Some days, I know this might sound bizarre, but monitor yourself. Just look at yourself in the mirror regularly, track it, not judging for age or what's wrong, looking at getting to know what you look like. So when it shifts, you can go, is this muscle tension because of what's happening? Start noticing, because that's what I do for people. The people I work with, I probably know more about their, little minor movements, nervous system behaviors than they do. Right? It just is. So if I'm speaking to somebody and their muscle tone drops slightly, that's an indicator. So if you were a parent, would you want to know that? Because what people would say to me is, oh, that person went from 0 to 1,000. They went from nothing going on to smashing the house up, or punching the neighbor, or smashing the car through road rage, or, right? They've gone from 0 to, no, they haven't. No such thing. Sorry to burst your bubble. A load of crock. No. There are always indicators. So when you understand your indicators, when you understand other people's indicators, you go, oh, that person, I was talking to them and they got flushed. They're triggered. Right? Not your fault necessarily. They need to learn to regulate, or at least, if they're your children, you co-regulate, you teach them how to regulate. Right? Because a lot of you may not have been sufficiently co-regulated by, because of a lack of that attunement or bonding early. So you had to self-soothe yourself. That would be like, though, and no judgment. So this may trigger some of you, trigger alert. Because it was a phase of parenting where it was said to let your children cry. But it didn't mean you can, if you listen to the language of an infant, you can hear the shift in the cries and the noises. And you know when it gets to a certain sound, they're gone. Their nervous system is so dysregulated, right? If you leave them, they can't self-soothe. So what do you think they do? They cut off. They shut down. And so you'll see, and I see this in schools all the time, like these kids, they grow up. They dissociate. They freak, and it'd be like, oh, little Sally, she's so good. So good. She's a good girl. Why? Because they don't make a sound. They don't do anything to create any, you see? So most of my clients were boys for a long time, till I started to educate on what's happening with the children in the classroom, what's for the quiet ones, because it's the other end. We only used to worry about the aggressive or loud ones, right? So this is for you too. Everything I'm saying is for you. I'm just using different stories to see how you can get the point. It's like, is your first point of response for this particular person, because it'd be different for different people, right? Often. For someone in authority, you may not yell at them, although you may, right? If the police pull you over for speeding and you don't think you're speeding and you start mouthing off at them, right? You probably are going to end up locked up, or have a bigger fine or whatever it is. Or you might collapse a little, you might go inside yourself and find it hard to even speak to them or even do what they're telling you to do, right? It's these other ends of the spectrum. So, it could be complying. Oh, they're such a good child because they're complying. Oh, she's so good with her children and her husband. Or he's so great with all the responsibilities he has, never complains. Because he could have gone into that slight collapse and comply. Can't get out of the situation, so no point. Do you see? A little? So I think we might start looking at, I don't know, let me know, because I want to do my P's when I show up here. Otherwise, I just show up and tell a story, right? Which you might like. But I think we're going to start bringing in some particular behaviors, like specific, and maybe what would be helpful for that particular fear or that particular behavior. Right? Pardon me, which is what we'll be learning in cloud. Some of you are in cloud, so I'm looking forward to that. And some of you are interested, but you don't quite understand what we're doing yet. And I spoke to somebody yesterday, and it was an interesting conversation because it's really difficult for me personally, to explain what it's going to be, because there's the program and then there's the participants. And so far, who's on board, it's guiding how that program will run. Do you see? Meaning, I'm looking at who's on board and what their needs are, what they prefer, or how they might prefer to integrate, and so on. So that's what I look at. So we start off with a model that we know works, and then we, like, I don't think, one of you might have been in Psi. So Psi was like that too. So we have what we're going to learn, but the how of how we're going to learn it is dependent on who shows up and how you learn. Do you see? So so I could tell you the theory, and we'll be doing practices, we'll be doing learning how to regulate, be learning how to integrate what suits the particular system that you have. So which one of those two might you be? And there's a bunch of others, right? But if you were to pick one, or know that there's a particular behavior that you have, or if you start listening that people have said over the years, they may not be fully true, but there may be a spark of truth. Like if your partner or your children or people around you are saying, you're not listening. Now that might be their stuff. Well, it is, but it's also a little bit of truth there, that maybe there's a better way for that communication to happen based on your experiences. So all our relationships are like this, but once we know what the want or the need is, even with the infants, we don't need to tell the story, right? We don't need the whole story. I need to know what's happening with that child's nervous system. And if they can't talk to me, well, I've got eyes. I can see the behavior, right? I can listen. If they're silent, if they're silent, why are they silent? Are they asleep, or are they, right? What they're often, the first thing I would do is touch their hands and feet. That links to the energetic arm of the nervous system, what that triple warmer is doing, you know. And I would start to soothe the nervous system and have the adults watch what I'm doing. So not watch me, watch the child's face and body, so that they can see the calming and the soothing that's happening, so that they can see when the child's calm, their nervous system's in homeostasis, right? And when it's not, so that they can notice. And so with you, with adults, it's similar. I'm saying, what's happening in your body? How do you feel? What's the sensation? Where is it? But we can go even deeper, right? I have these cards in Perth. Oh, I didn't bring them over. But they were used for infants, and they've got mirrors on them, but they've got pictures on the other side. And so you turn and I use them for adults in my work, right? I had all these play and toys, play therapy and whatnot, and for the kids. But they work just as well for the adults. And even my colleagues, because I did supervision for my colleagues, and sometimes would use these, and you'd turn the card over and you would see your face, right? They had little mirrors on them, not glass, but you could see your reflection. And on the other side, you'd have a little story, and you turn it over. Like, get used to looking at yourself. And when we do these programs, it's Zoom, so you probably can see yourself, right? You can start to monitor. And that's what I spoke to someone yesterday, you know who you are, and we were talking about the monitoring, the monitoring of the nervous system, the monitoring of the energetics to see, okay, what's happening at different stages, so that it links back. So I'm going to bring it around, and we're going to close off this live, to prior preparation. Planning prevents piss poor performance. Or you can leave the piss out, but whatever. I'm Australian. Eric's got a singlet that says, what's it say? Something about, I have no fear, my wife's Australian, something like that. I don't know. I bought it for him. But you to be a little rough around the edges to live in some of those places. But all right, so consider, this is your contemplation. If you've got nothing else from this chat, observe yourself today or this week, but start with today. Start with the next hour. Just observe yourself, either from internally or if you're on the computer, or if you're, I don't know, look at yourself more often. Just look at yourself more often, right? Why I can see when something's changed. I can walk into your house. I might only be in your house once. The next time I come to your house, I'll be like, oh, this has moved. That's changed. Oh, you've moved this there. Oh, that's cool. Or, oh, your hair's different. You've done it. Da, 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 da. Like, my observation skills are on point. Why? It's a survival strategy. Now it's a superpower. So as a kid, I needed to know to keep myself safe. Not necessarily from my family, but from the people around, around us. Right. So I have, that hypervigilance, which a lot of you have from growing up in unsafe places, whether that's your family home or the area. So in the army, I was taught at, observing in the field, meaning in the bush, scanning in the bush to know where the enemy is, or where the booby traps were, or the mortars, or the if the earth's shifted in any way, we know, oh, okay, we need to look for mines, right? So think about that. I know it sounds bizarre, it's a whole nother world. And then we bring it into this, like, into civilian life, and it's like, knowing. So if you're trained to look for things that go bang in the room, right? I walk in a room, I know where I'm, like, it's just natural for me to scan. Right? It's just a natural ability, based on trying to keep safe. So it's not trying to keep safe anymore. It's just an observation of paying attention. So what's your superpower? And in cloud, we're going to find out. And then you're going to learn how to utilize it as a superpower. And if it's not going to be very functional for you as a superpower, then what else can, is it something that it's time to shift that now? All righty, we'll leave it at that. And I'm going to end the Is that from today? Rebel, did you put that in today? Okay. I had a bit of deja vu because I think I mentioned that last week. Yeah, and my job as when I was a social worker and in supervision and all of that, you walked in and I did have a desk at one point that faced the window and the door was behind me. But every other time I was able to move it around. Yeah, even in the house, like, where things are set up. But it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. There's many a human I've had to save from, where they get locked in a room and they're in trouble because of the, certain clientele that we had that were either on something or, highly aroused and outside the window. And that can be dangerous. And yeah, so that's happened even with the alarms and all the safety things we had. It doesn't matter if you're locked in the room with somebody who's very scared, then you need to know how to help them calm, right? Or you're going to get hurt. So I'm lucky in that respect that I had skills of talking to inebriated people from very young. I just always had to, like, if I saw people fighting, even if I was like younger and walking along and there's all these drunks in the street or whatever, how that, people after nightclubs and stuff, they'd come in. I worked at one of my first jobs was at 7-Eleven. So they'd come in and, buy stuff and they were on drugs or drunk. And then always be fights. I was always breaking up fights. Like not in a getting between them way, with my words and my befriending them. And it pretty much, I would say 8, 9, quite a high percent that end up with their arm around me going, hey, mate, we ended up my friends. I'm like, right, job done. No one's killed today, right? So that's how I grew up. I grew up, I guess, doing this work, but without skills, like helping people regulate and calm and understand why they're upset and how, relationships can be. But often, as a younger person, my brother would always say to me, you got to start, because my brother's a year older than me. And we'd go to the clubs or the discos back in those days, and there were always fights in the bathrooms, right? There was always fights in the bathrooms. And little me would go in. And I just can't, it's like, because there was always a bunch of bullies picking on someone, right? So I couldn't leave it. And my brother would say, you just got to leave it. And I'd be like, I can't. It's like leaving a little puppy to be ripped up by the lions. I couldn't. And so, I wouldn't get into, well, occasionally I got into a fight, but it wasn't because I picked them. I never, went out picking fights. It's just that it's like calming the situation down, helping that person be safe, right? And really, if you look at it, it's what I still do today. That's what I still do today. In primary school and in high school, I was the one that the younger ones or the weaker ones came to say, such and such is picking on me, right? And I'd be like, well, you just hang around here. Because I had a reputation. I didn't even have to do anything because I had an older brother and sister that went around telling everybody not to mess with me, right? So no one messed with me. That was awesome. Um, so yeah, so I was a protector. I did a lot of protecting. That's my adaptive strategy, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, it's my adaptive strategy. Making sure everyone's all right. Is everyone all right? Is everyone safe? Does anyone need anything? Right. Even in my family being the youngest, I did that. My adaptive strategy kept me safe. Now it's my job. So in some ways. All right, well, we'll wrap up. I said we'll wrap up. So I'll say see you later to Instagram. If you're interested in anything we've talked about, we'll continue chatting about it, and leave me a message and let me know what came up for you, what you might like to know more about. And until we meet again, much love. And just sharing that. I've got all these bites on my arms. I don't know what it is. But the other night I felt something crawling up my arm, and I went, and I felt it like it wasn't a mosquito or something. I've got these bites now. I don't know what they. You can see that one there. It's like bit me there, and then I felt it went flick. I'm like, I don't know what what could bite, because if it was like a scorpion, I don't think scorpions go along going bite, 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 bite. It's very bizarre. Anyway, they sort of come up like little blisters. They're not itchy anymore, but all right. So I haven't turned off Facebook yet, but we'll do that now and get ready for our inner circle, where I'm expecting some questions, ladies. Oh, someone's jumped off. So we won't hang around for too long. And just do some Q&A.